Today my special guest on Hello Darlink is Rodney Bridge, a father from Western Australia who took on a David vs Goliath mission and made international headlines. Rodney's world came crashing down in 2013 when his 16-year-old son, Preston, died after taking a synthetic drug that caused hallucinations and jumped to his death. Rodney, after being told that an investigation into offshore drug manufacturing was pointless, launched his own campaign, an own crusade to China, to fight back against the deadly synthetic drugs that took the life of his son. The Global Portrait Media House nominated Rodney as one of the 30 most influential people on the globe for his work in China. Today, Rodney will share the insights of his crusade and life after he began fighting the evil of drug culture sweeping today's world. Hello, Darling, and welcome to Hello Darling Talk Show.
Hello, darling. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How are you today?
Yeah, still wake up every morning, still breathing, so it's most probably a very good start.
All I don't like is the still. Wake up in the morning, breathing, and being the most inspiring man of 2019, momentum most inspiring man of 2019.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice honour, but you know, as I said before, I'm just a father doing a job that I think any other father would do. So you know, I don't believe I'm a hero.
You have been also named the 30 most influential people on the globe, in the world.
Yeah, that was quite an amazing notification. They got hold of me on Facebook and told me that I'd been nominated and accepted in the top 30 in the world in China for the most influential person, which is a bit of an honour, but I don't think I'd go back to China and accept the award. Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about it, and I think I understand why.
Yeah, of course.
We are here in Western Australia. Rodney, I'm sorry my heart breaks, but I have to take our viewers back to the day when you received the news that every parent fears most. And believe me, every parent in the world is feeling afraid of getting this kind of news. Please tell me about this day, and then we move on when you received the news about Preston.
Yeah, well, it's easy to tell the story a little bit before that. It was Preston's big day coming up the Saturday, Friday, which is his school ball, which, you know, any Year 12 kid looks so much forward to the school ball. I think it's more important than their exams. So I took Preston to the convention centre, dressed up in his beautiful dinner suit with his girlfriend, and and I agreed to meet him again at 11:30 that night, pick him up from there, and take him to that dreaded after party, which, you know, I think every parent out there is concerned about. So I picked him up at 11:30 with his plethora of his little mates too, his other three mates. So we all piled in the car and went home and got changed, and Preston got into his board shorts and that. It was a bit of a pool party come end of the year, sort of, you know, after party. So we arrived at the after party in Scarborough, and I dropped Preston off, and the last thing I said to him was, you know, just behave yourself and look after yourself. And his last words to me was, "What do you think, I'm an idiot?" And they were the last words we spoke. They had their fun at the after party, and in the morning, about 3:30, I had a text message from him saying that he'd like to stay there and help clean up after, help one of his friends' dads. And I went back to him and said, "Look, more than happy for you to stay," which is something that he does on a regular sort of occasion. And I said, "Yeah, I don't have any problem with that, but if you leave, text me and I'll come and get you straight away." I didn't hear from him at all. Naturally assumed that Preston had stayed there. And about 9 o'clock in the morning, Amy, my daughter, came into the bedroom. She said, "Want to go for breakfast?" Said, "Love to." And I said, "I'll get ready." So we both got ready, headed off in the car, and I said, "Text Preston and we'll pick him up from wherever he is. And then we're going to have a nice little family breakfast together." So we drove down Scarborough Beach Road, turned right into West Coast Highway and went past the Sun and Moon Resort. And we went down to a place called Yellow, and it was fully booked. So we turned around and came back and went back past the Sun and Moon again. And as we went past, I saw an ambulance, police cars, and I thought, you know, what's happened here? Somebody's either been murdered in the driveway or fallen off the building or something. I didn't sort of put it all together. Then we got down to Florida Beach and I pulled up and I said to Amy, I said, I got a really bad feeling about that back there. And Amy said, what do you mean? I said, I got a really bad feeling. And Amy said the same thing. She goes, so do I. And we didn't feel comfortable. So drove back to the Sun and Moon, and when we got there, there was police and the ambulance had disappeared. Amy went across the road and she got halfway and she just stopped and came back and she said, Dad, I can't do it. I said, you can't do what? She goes, I just feel uncomfortable. So I jumped out of the car, I ran across the road, and first person I saw one of Preston's closest mates, and he was standing there looking at me, and the first thing he was trying to say the word P. And Fraser, what's going on? And he said Preston, and then I realised that it was worse than what I expected. Got fronted by the police, and the police officer said to me that if that was your boy, he's been taken to Charlie Gardner's and he's not in a good way. So Amy and I got back in the car and drove back to the Charlie Gardner's, and I picked up my ex-wife at that time, and yeah, got greeted in the emergency service by a neurologist, a psych, a counsellor, a head nurse, and they were all there. And as soon as I saw them, I knew things weren't good. So we asked if we could see Preston, and they said he was up in the ICU getting sort of prepared. And went up to the ICU and walked in the room, and we saw this perfect specimen sitting laying on the bed. And there was a little scratch under his chin, and that was about it. And we had leads and cords, and I thought, what's just happened to you? Like, I didn't know what had happened, what had gone on. So anyway, we met the doctors again, and they told us that he had a 120mm laceration across the back of his head, which was actually where his brainstem was. So as soon as they told me that, I knew that there wasn't much hope. Yeah, so spent the rest of the day and the night with Preston, and you know, we had so many people turn up in the waiting room to go and see him. I think I lost count. There was at least 200 people. So when you sit back and you think about that, and you think we've got a lot of kids here, one of his closest friends here to see him, I thought there's an opportunity here. If Preston's not going to make it, I've got to make something out of this. At this point in time, I still didn't know what happened. I didn't know there was any drugs involved. I knew nothing whatsoever, other than, you know, Preston had an accident. Got spoken to a couple of Preston's friends that were with him that night, and they said that Preston, one of his mates, had given him a tab called 25IM Bone that he'd bought from Silk Road. Now, me, being as naive as what I was, I thought, what is Silk Road? It's a suburb, obviously. It's a street in a suburb. I didn't know Silk Road was an international website where you could purchase drugs. So after I sort of chatted to him about that, and then met the coroner's investigators and had a word with them, and they told me that Silk Road was a website, drug website, and I just said, look, I can't believe how you could purchase drugs off a website. It's impossible. I didn't know that existed. It was the Monday. We'd put about 250 kids through the ICU to say their final goodbyes to Preston. And then on Monday at 3:48, we were told that he was brain dead. So that was the hardest words you could ever imagine in your life. When somebody says that, you think, well, that's it. You're never going to see him again. And that was the hardest part. And for some reason, your mind acts differently, because all I could think of was, I was upset for Amy and his mates. I wasn't concerned about how I was feeling. I was just worried about them. So I got over all that, and then, you know, then we had all the formalities, and, you know, we ended up agreeing to donate Preston's organs, and Churchlands High School, which was the school that he went to, decided they wanted to put a memorial on, so we organised all that, and then we had 1,400 people turn up there, and then we had a private ceremony at Pinaroo, and we had 700 turn up there. So it was just a little bit out of hand. Just shows you what sort of kid he was. After all that finished, I had time to concentrate then on, you know, what had happened and what 25IM Bone was and what Silk Road was, and that's where I started my mission. Yeah.
Thank you, Rodney, for that. Did you ever confront the boy, the person who gave Preston the synthetic drug?
Yeah, look, I never spoke to him. I never spoke to his parents. They never contacted me. Could I have made an issue of it with him? Absolutely, but you know, it wasn't his intention to kill Preston. So, did I want to create him more heartache than what he was going through at that stage? No, I thought the best thing was just to leave him alone and let him sort himself out. You know, one day I might talk to him, but.
What would you say today if you would sit in front of him?
Look, I mean, if I was sitting in front of him, I would certainly, in my mind, not want to forgive him. But reality is, you know, Preston could have done the same thing. I mean, any of the boys could have. It was just that this kid had access to the Silk Road, and he made a stupid decision that night. He decided to make him, you know, make a man of himself and hand these tabs out with actually not knowing what they were. But if I wanted to be angry with anybody, it would have been the director of Silk Road, Ross Albrecht. He was the person that I was happy to see get locked up.
And we come to it. And this is probably the question I was going to give you later. Where and how did you find the closure?
When I found out that Ross Albrecht had been caught, it was, yeah, I cried. I cried for hours. I was notified at 5:30 in the morning by a 6PR radio station rang me.
Wow.
And when I found out about it, yeah, it was a bit of closure. More of a shock really to think, you know, we got this 32-year-old Texan person that had such an empire. It was quite shocking, quite horrific to think that one person could do that.
God.
Yeah, and anyway, he was caught, sentenced, and lucky enough to do an impact statement to the judge in New York, which gave him 2 life sentences, 20 years and 5 years on 4 counts. So I was happy with that.
Rodney, tell me, how did you think it through? Obviously 60 Minutes made most incredible documentary and assisted you on your second trip to China. I'm actually more interested in the first trip, the moment. How do you strategize? You grieving father, you in a incredible pain. You want to save the future victims. How do you do it? Where do you find and how do you find these strengths, strategy?
Well, look, it was more not in relation to Preston passing away. It was more, my thought pattern was I wanted to make sure it didn't happen to anybody else. And I spoke to, when I found out 2,5-IM-BOM, it was a research chemical out of China. I found websites that were selling it directly to your front door, to the youth. They were giving free samples. So I spoke to the federal police here, and federal police didn't take it serious, so I thought, okay, well, if you won't take it serious, let me show you how to do it.
May I ask, how didn't they take it serious? What was the response for the government agencies when you said...
Look, they believed that it wasn't a big issue. And I said, look, if you've got a substance like that kills one person, as far as I'm concerned, it is a big issue. They believed that methamphetamine issue was more important, and they throw all their resources into that. So, you know, my issue was no. This is a product that will get out of hand. If a 16-year-old boy can buy it online on a drug site, then it can happen anywhere in the world, and it can happen anywhere in Australia to any person. So my attitude was, let's find out what this is all about and expose it. And you know, I suppose one of my biggest issues that I had was looking at China, for an example, as a country. China take their drugs very seriously, very serious issue in China, but yet they still allow companies and organisations and just individuals to manufacture these products legally and sell them all over the world. These products kill people. A country doesn't have a right to do that. So that was the main thing I wanted to expose, was that there's countries out there manufacturing this in a legal way. So when I spoke with the federal police, they didn't take it serious, so I left it at that.
How did you start your research? How did you...
3 weeks later, I went on website and I just typed in 25IM-BOMI China. Up came all the websites, and I made contact with certain companies, and I told them that I wanted to come to China on business, and when I was over there, I'll drop in and see them, and they were more than happy for me to come over. It took a little bit of convincing, but I said to them I wasn't going to hand any money over unless I actually saw their organisation and their establishment and how they did things to make sure that they weren't scammers. And I was lucky enough to get in the front door.
How much money did you have on you to go there and buy the drugs?
For the purchase of drugs? Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing at all. Yeah.
Rodney, weren't you aware of it, that you can get killed, that if they would realise that you obviously posing as a drug dealer?
Absolutely, but I wasn't overly concerned about that.
No.
To believe it or not, I wasn't concerned about if somebody decided to terminate me, and if I got caught, well then so be it. You know, at least I would have made a stand somewhere. But that wasn't in my headspace at the point in time. I wasn't thinking that way.
So the pain was bigger than fear.
Absolutely. Look, I went to the distribution centre in Shanghai and you know, I was standing with 8 of the kingpins in the drug world and all the distributors and 500-600 kilos of research chemical drugs. And to be quite open with you, if I had a hand grenade, I would have pulled the pin. I would have just finished it. Because the reality was that I could just see what was going on, and to stop it is just going to be an amazing feat to try and stop it. And I think I did some damage. I think I did some damage, yeah.
Rodney, in effect, when I read the results that you achieved, first time I thought it was a typo. And I want you please to say it now to our viewers, the outcome of your David Weiss Goliath mission.
Yeah. Look, I
that
mean,
you can only be compared to.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to happen. I didn't expect it to be that big, but yeah, when I found out what had happened over there, I got most probably 30 journalists from China and from America, Korea, Japan, trying to contact me, and eventually I admitted who I was and ended up doing a press release to the whole world. And after that, then the Chinese government stepped in and you know, they interviewed over 150,000 people. They arrested 21,000, convicted. They banned 5 million social media sites that were selling the drugs. But the most important thing of all was they put 116 research chemicals on the poison class 1 list, which means it's now an illegal product, which was most probably the one that I wanted, because now 2,5-I and things like APVP and stuff are now banned products, which is good.
Incredible. Rodney, looking back, would you describe yourself before this tragic thing happened as a very brave man? What was your...
No, not at all. Not at all. I think I regard myself as pretty streetwise, so I knew what I was doing over there. I mean, yeah. I mean, the whole time that I was over here on the first trip, I was being followed the whole time. I actually could spot them easily. So yeah, no, I did have concerns, but look, reality is, you know, if they wanted to do something, then so be it. I didn't think that way.
Rodney, there is a silver lining.
Yeah.
While you were there, you were appointed interpreter.
Yep.
Please tell us the story.
Yeah, well, I realised that when I got to China, I was going to struggle trying to find out how to drive to locations, where locations were, and worst of all, trying to talk Mandarin, the language. So I had no option, but I employed the services of an interpreter and also part-time driver. And when I told her what I was doing, my intentions were, she was pretty horrified. And I take my hat off to her, because she helped me immensely. She got me into locations that I don't think any foreigner could get into. And we got on so well, yeah, in July 2015 we married. So.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Rodney Darling, may I ask you, what would be your word of, I don't know, advice, message to all parents that are fearing the worst? Because as I'm aware, Preston wasn't even involved in drugs. He was a lovely, fresh, healthy boy. To parents that are fearing, what can they do, if they can do anything, to hear their child without searching the rooms and getting slammed doors? You know what I mean?
I get asked that question all the time, and look, I suppose I can only reflect back on me. I didn't know anything about what research chemical drugs were, and I was like, I used to say to Preston, you know, I'll give you some rope, but you know, if you get up to no good and do something wrong, I said, you're going to hang yourself. And then if that happens, there'll be a new sheriff in town. So the whole rules between him and I would change, because we had that such open relationship. And having an open relationship, we talked about many subjects. We didn't talk about drugs, because to me, I didn't have any need to, because I did have what I called the perfect child. Every parent out there has the perfect child, but it can turn pear-shaped real quick.
Yeah.
And especially in Preston's situation. And I know I say it a lot, but I can only use Preston as an example, that you know, he had the world at his feet, and there's a lot of kids out there like that, and it's all to do with that one informed decision. It's not knowing what you're doing, and unless you're educated, and to me, early intervention education is the only way. I say a lot to people about, you know, a couple bring a child into a world, it's not the child's choice, but it should be your decision, and you should be looking after your child. You should be teaching your child the difference between right and wrong and educate them. The problem I have in relation to synthetic drugs and research chemical drugs is, how do you educate your children if you don't know yourself? So this is why when we talk about the program that I do, Sideffect, it just educates people, and it just allows you to have that conversation with your children, and vice versa. The children have that conversation with their parents, and that conversation about drugs is nobody wants to talk about.
Absolutely.
But I think in this day and age you have to.
Rodney, my almost redundant question, but it's my question that I love to give you. If you had a magic wand that I give my guests at the end of the interviews, what would you wish for? 2 wishes, one for the world and one for you.
Okay, well, for the world, I'd like, and you know, I haven't finished my mission, but I would like to have all research chemical drugs, and that includes the synthetic versions of things like methamphetamine, to make it a banned substance. That these products that manufacture it, make them banned substances all out throughout the world, so you can't manufacture them, you can't make them. And on a personal thing, if I had my chance, boy, I'd love to swap places with Pres.
Rodney, thanks for helping the world. Thanks for changing the world. The change for you, but you're changing the world.
Oh, thank you.
I think you're an absolute hero, and
Well,
it's
don't
just
look
the
at it that way.
beginning of the journey. And thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for being.
And I hope everyone comes with me on this one.
Thank you for being my special guest here on Hello Darling. Thank you.
Thank you. A pleasure.